The oops moment that I want to tell you about happened exactly 35 years and 1 day ago. November 17, 1990. 11/17/90. It's not like that date is etched in my memory or anything. It's more like it is burned into my brain with a red-hot branding iron. And the reason for that is I am a Notre Dame football fan. And that allows me 12 times a year at least that I can live in my fanatic brain rather than in my regular rational brain. And when that happens, oops moments are quite likely, as a matter of fact. And on that particular occasion, in 1990, Notre Dame was ranked number 1 in the country at the time, and they were about to play Penn State at Notre Dame. I had tickets for that game. I couldn't wait to go to that game. And when I told my wife how happy I was that I had tickets and was going to the game, she just looked at me calmly and said, "No, you're not. You're not going to that game because my parents rented a beach house at Hatteras, North Carolina for the week of Thanksgiving. And that rental begins on Saturday, November 17th. So you're going to Hatteras Island and we're all going there. And that's the end of that story." I knew right away that there was no room for debate. I just started figuring out what I could claim as some kind of compensation for that. So I said, "Okay, but we have to leave early enough that I can get to Hatteras in time to watch the game, which begins at 3:30 in the afternoon." She said, "That's fine. I wanted to get there early anyway because I'm in charge of getting the kitchen ready and cooking dinner so that my parents can arrive and sit down for dinner without having to do any of the work." I said, "Okay." So we made plans to take off at the crack of dawn that Saturday morning with our 2 sons who were 6 and 8 years old at the time. So they were, of course, a tremendous help to us on the trip. They got in the back seat and we stuffed our Jeep Cherokee with everything we owned, plus a week of groceries because we didn't want to have to stop at the grocery store when we got there. And we strapped all our luggage to the roof rack, and with that packed to the gills car, took off. We drove 7 hours, or I drove 7 hours, to Nags Head, North Carolina. And we had learned earlier in the week that unfortunately the only bridge to Hatteras Island was taken out by a ship that had been tossed in a storm into the supports for the bridge. And so there was no bridge to Hatteras Island anymore. We had to take a ferry from Nags Head to Hatteras. That didn't sound too bad in theory, but when we got there, we found out there was a long waiting list to get on the ferry, and that the ferry ride, even though you could see Hatteras Island in the distance, was an hour-long ferry ride because there were a lot of currents and channels and the ferry had to go very slowly. So we resigned ourselves to that, but I was watching the clock, of course, and when we were finally summoned to get on the ferry with our car, it was exactly 3:30 and the game was starting. So I put the game on the radio and I listened to the game as we went across the channel there on the ferry, and the game was going very well. Notre Dame was winning by 2 touchdowns. I was happy. We got to the other side and they said, "Okay, you can drive off the ferry now." And I went to turn the car on and I had drained the battery by listening to the radio for an hour. And the guys on the ferry weren't very happy with me, but they found jumper cables and a battery. They jumped me, we got off the ferry and we drove to the beach house. When we got to the beach house, we found that there was no ground entrance to the beach house. Instead, there was a set of 30 stairs leading up to the main floor of the house that we were going to have to carry everything in that Jeep up those 30 stairs. I should correct that, not we were going to have to do that. I was going to have to do that because my wife had to go up and get the kitchen ready and start cooking dinner. And my kids had to go run around and turn the jacuzzi on and do everything that kids do when they get to a beach house. So I was assigned and accepted the assignment of carrying everything from that Jeep up 30 stairs. In retrospect, I think it took me about 30 trips up the 30 stairs. So if you're good at math, that's 900 stairs that I did, carrying various loads. And I was exhausted. By the time I got done with that, I plopped down on the couch, turned the TV on. There were 2 minutes left in the game, and Penn State had pulled off a tremendous comeback, and the score was tied. From that point, things unfolded about as badly as they could. Notre Dame threw a late interception. Penn State kicked a game-winning field goal on the last play of the game, and our season was ruined. I stood up and said, I'm going for a walk. And I went out the sliding glass door, walked down to the beach, and I started running up this dark beach. By that time, it was pitch dark. The wind was blowing in my face. Rain was pouring down. I was soaked within minutes. I was screaming obscenities at the top of my lungs to all of Hatteras Island. I was telling God that he did not exist. I was telling him that even if he did exist, he wasn't doing a very good job of taking care of Mother Mary's University, where Touchdown Jesus' favorite football team. And by the time I got done with all that ranting, I think it was about an hour, I don't know how long it was, I finally got so exhausted I couldn't go a step further. I turned around and I realized, oops, I don't have any idea which house I'm going back to. All these beach houses look exactly the same. I wandered down the beach. I went up on a few different decks, peered into a few different sliding glass doors. Luckily, was not arrested for being a peeping Tom, but I finally arrived back at the right house. And when I did, there was a lovely dinner waiting. My in-laws had arrived. My kids were happy to see me, and I was able to change into some dry clothes and enjoyed a beautiful dinner with my family.